For session 2 of our class, we're going to cover soft tissue injuries. This is chapters 19 and 22 out of the book. So mostly that's bandaging, although we'll have a little bit to say about tourniquets and impaled objects. Here's a little bit of astrophotography backed by popular demand. If demand arises to kill the astro, that's good too, just let me know. So let's get right to it. 19.1, Controlling Bleeding. There are some important things to note about this particular skill because it's critical in your primary assessment after all. First thing is BSI. If there is blood, there is a threat to you and potentially back to the patient. Always, 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 always. BSI. Expose the area. Always expose the injury. There are times when you can't. There are perhaps times when you shouldn't. Always in class and on the exam, go to skin. Get out scissors. Say, I'm cutting this clothing, and do it unless the evaluators stop you. Basically, sterile dressing, direct pressure. And we'll show you in class about how hard that pressure has to be. Add more dressings on top as necessary. Don't pull the first one off, except only very briefly to look under it, maybe, to see if the bleeding has stopped. You don't want to interrupt any clotting that's forming. Bandage it. We'll show you how to do that in a minute. And then, if the bleeding is uncontrolled, use a tourniquet. Pack with a hemostatic dressing if available, with gauze if not, if it's a large wound or something that's not available for a tourniquet, like if it's not on an extremity.
Okay.
Cut on my arm.
Okay. Oh yeah. So what I'm going to have you do is put your hand on here like this, see how hard I'm squeezing?
Yep.
You go ahead and do that for me.
Still bleeding?
Okay. Let's do the tray gel. Go ahead and squeeze again. Good job.
Bleeding's controlled.
Bleeding control. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap it for you. I'm going to swap out. Perfect. Thank you. It's going to be kind of tight.
Okay.
Can you feel me touch here?
Yep.
Can you work with your fingers? Excellent. Put your hand here. Like that. Okay. There you go.
Skill 19.2, applying a tourniquet. If you were in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, say, and took first aid, you might have heard that a tourniquet was a last resort. Really, you shouldn't be afraid of one. Surgeons use them all the time, put them on, take them off. No damage to the limb if they're removed in a reasonable amount of time. So if you can't control a bleed with direct pressure and it's on an extremity, a tourniquet is your next bet. So here's what a tourniquet looks like. The dark cravat is the constrictor cravat with the stick stuck through a knot so that when you twist the stick around, it tightens things. And then finally, there's a second cravat here to secure the stick so it doesn't just unroll on you. So the points from the skill guide are you should maintain direct pressure on the wound while you're preparing a tourniquet. Ideally, you've got a helper to do this for you, or you could ask the patient to do it. Doing a tourniquet one-handed is a little dicey. The tourniquet should be several inches proximal to the injury, but don't put it directly over a joint. If there's a large wound, pack it with gauze, or alternatively, pack it with hemostatic gauze if your patrol allows that. You twist the rod to tighten only enough to control the bleeding and then tie it off. I don't think this is in the guide, but it's a good idea to note that the patient has had a tourniquet applied and put the time. We just write it on their forehead, although a note taped them up to them will do just as well.
Injuries already exposed. I am going to kind of take care of this for you. Okay.
Still bleeding.
Okay.
Still bleeding.
Still bleeding. Scoot up your leg there.
Still bleeding.
Okay.
Bleeding controlled.
And don't forget to put the time on here. And don't forget to write the time here.
Skill 19.3 is the application of a self-adhering roller bandage to the despair of patent attorneys everywhere that's known as cling pretty much universally. So one little grace note, I want to introduce what I call the toilet paper rule, after the helpful kitty that taught that one to me. The toilet paper rule is simply over the top is bad. If it's toilet paper, you wind up with a big pile on the floor. If it's cling, you wind up dropping it, fumbling it, and otherwise not looking your best. So here's how it looks. You do it like this. That's a finger there holding the cling down, okay, art critics? The cling should come from under the roll, and then you can unwind it easily. It's not over the top of the roll, okay? Easy peasy. So anyway, the way you do this is you secure your dressing with several wraps of the cling. You do overlapped wraps, both proximal and distal to the wound, and then you secure it. And there are a variety of different ways to do it. In the video, you'll see Matt do it with tape. I'll show you how to tuck an end of it under, which is pretty obvious. And you can also do a cool move I call the tie off against a bite, which I'll demonstrate after Matt shows us how the cling is done.
We have bleeding. Okay. I'm going to have you hold right here. Just push real hard for a minute while we get the other bandage together. Okay, good. You can let go. This is going to be tight. I'm going to secure this with some tape. There we go. Can you feel me touching your hair?
Mm-hmm.
Can you wiggle your toes? Excellent.
Now, as you saw, Matt used tape to attach the cling. Here are a couple of other ways. One, you can find a spot in the wrap, here I'm just using the top of it, and just simply tuck the end in and smooth things out. Another is to pull a bite Matt used around to make the cling. And here is out of that, so you can tie the bitter end bite of the bandage against it. Just tie yourself a square knot there. Sorry, my hands are covering it, but you get the idea. Skill 19.4 is the use of an occlusive dressing, especially on a neck injury. And the reason you use an airtight or occlusive dressing is just to keep air out of the jugulars or carotids. You don't want those bubbles going up into the brain and causing problems, or down into the heart. So the book says maintain direct pressure on the wound, but don't do both carotids at once. There's a footnote on that. If there's an impaled object, stabilize it, and we'll show you how to do that in a few skills. Use a figure 8 wrap to secure the dressing in place. Don't just wrap a bandage around the patient's neck. And both direct pressure on both carotids and a bandage that goes around the neck is known as strangling your patient. That's bad.
Ooh, we have a wound. Go ahead and just put your hand up there. Thank you. to swap with you for a second? Move your hand. Thank you. Okay, go ahead and put your hand back. I'll trade with you. Good job. Okay, I'll trade it. Almost done. Go ahead and hold that. And I'll trade, and then I'm going to have you hold it a little bit longer too. Go ahead and put your hand back there.
And then remove your hand so people can see.
Yep, move your hand.
Skill 19.5, the triangular bandage bandana wrap, is a nice little one when you have to secure a dressing on the head. As it happens, bandaging a round thing is kind of hard, and you don't want to obviously wrap bandages around the squishy bits. So what you do is you maintain tension throughout, and that will maintain pressure on the dressing, and Matt shows it better than I can tell it.
Well, it looks like you have a head wound there. What I'm going to have you do is put your hand on there, hold that for me, pull it real tight. I'm going to put a bandage on there, so I'm going to trade with you. There we go, thank you. It's going to be kind of tight. Okay, just put your hand up there for a second. Okay, to trade with you. There we go. Sure, you're still covered. Good.
Skill 19.6, bandaging a finger. It's easiest to just use roller bandage and tape to secure it, splint if you need to, and then you have to keep the whole 9 yards from sliding off to the end of the finger, so it's best to secure the bandage to the rest of the hand. And if you've got a whole roll of cling, as you can see here, that's really easy to do. Take it away, Matt.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap this up right on your wound. Get your finger and hold that right there. Thank you. I'll treat you. Because I just put this on. Can you feel me touching you there? Mm-hmm. Okay, can you wiggle? Good. So now we're going to wrap this up. This is going to help support your finger so it doesn't move around. Can you feel me touching you there? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Flip your wrist.
Skill 19.7, treating closed soft tissue injuries. The acronym to remember here is RISE, which just stands for rest. Obvious. Put ice on it to manage pain and help with swelling. Splint the injury if you can, and elevate it again to keep the swelling and pain down.
Okay, right here it hurts?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to put a little splint on there. Okay, just kind of hold that here. Put a little pad in here. Hold on. Okay, just kind of hold that for me if you can. Perfect. Put it on the back. Trade ya. you feel me touching you here?
Yep.
Wiggle your toes. Excellent.
Skill 19.8 and skill 22.1 both involve impaled objects. And so we're just going to show you the harder one, which is impaled object in the eye. The principles are the same. You want to do manual stabilization of the object. You definitely don't want to pull it out. Use donuts or bulky dressings to stabilize the object, such as this piece of glass and this unfortunate guy's chest. And make sure that the end of the object isn't getting caught by, say, the edge of the toboggan or somebody's pant leg. That'll cause noise. Noise attracts lawyers. We don't want that. Specifically with an eye, we want to make sure that you do not remove the impaled object. That's even more important than with an impaled object elsewhere in the body, because the amount of damage that can be done is just crazy. So just don't do it. Same deal. Stabilize, usually with a donut. Put cling in place to hold that, and then just cover both eyes so the patient isn't looking around with the good eye and whacking the impaled object around in their bad eye. Note that with both eyes covered up, the patient is in a pretty emotionally vulnerable state, and having any damage to your eye, or for that matter having a thing sticking out of your body, is already pretty traumatic. So make sure you manage the patient's emotional state as well as their physical state. With an eye injury, that means leaving someone there with them at all times, probably maintaining physical contact, a hand on their shoulder or even a hand in their hand.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
So what I'm going to do is, you got something in your eye. I'm going to take a bandage and cover up your good eye, because I want you to just keep it under with your eyes closed. Just keep staring at me, because I don't want you to move your eye at all. Okay? You're going to feel a little weird with this bandage over your good eye, but we just want to make sure that you don't move your injured eye around. Okay? Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bandage around this thing in your eye here. And then my helper, hey Travis, can you bring that thing and slide it over without moving it? There you go. And just hold it right in place. Don't push on it. Just hold it in place. Good, thank you. So now we're going to take a little bandage and we're going to wrap up that thing in your eye, okay? Just try to keep it in place. All we're going to do, it's going to be kind of strange doing this. In fact, I'm going to stand up for this. Oh, don't move. That's where it gets tricky. Thank you. There we go. Hold on. Okay, bring it around the head. How are you doing?
Good.
Okay, excellent. So we're just wrapping this up so it doesn't move. Yeah, you hold that. Don't touch the actual object. Go ahead and bring it around the back of the head again. Thank you.
I got this.
Okay, then we're going to just tape that.
I can hold this.
Okay, you hold that. Thank you. Tape this together. I'm going to put a little tape on there to hold everything in place. Okay, watch your finger. Okay, that should be it. Okay, just don't move your eye. Just keep looking straight ahead and we'll get you to the end.
Last skill in chapter 19 is 19.9, managing burn. First principle here, stop and cool that burn. Use a dry, sterile dressing on it unless it's less than 5% of body surface area, which, to say another way, use a wet one unless the burn is pretty big. If you think about the rule of nines, an entire leg is just 4 5% areas. So if they're burning a quarter of the surface of their leg, you should use a wet dressing. And then bandage. And since burns tend to be pretty serious injuries, consider transport even if the patient seems relatively stable.
Got a burn?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we do. So I'm going to wet this. We wet the dressing only if it's less than 5% of the total body surface area. So I put that there. You don't have to hold that. Just going to start wrapping you up here. It's going to kind of keep you covered up so when you get yourself to the hospital. Just hold that for me for a second. I'll treat you. And can you feel any touch here? Can you wiggle your fingers? Any tingling or numbness in the fingers?
No.
Okay, excellent.